Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back again. Uh, we're now into Obi-Wan chapter number 7, and in this one, we're going to talk about climate change, if you will, global warming for the earlier believers, climate change for the so-called new generation. And we're going to have 4 chapters, if you will, dedicated to this. And the first thing we want to do is take a look at how we come about that we're saying man has created a warming trend on the globe. Now, I don't have the charts. I'm not going to get them. You can look them up online, I'm sure. But there are 2 charts that seem to run in tandem, and I think this was the biggest basis for the reasoning behind global warming. And that is starting in about, well, it kicked off about 1850 or so, but it really didn't start taking off until around 1900. And that is the industrial age. That's when we really began doing a lot of things. I mean, look at all the equipment that was used and destroyed in World War One, for one thing. You had the advent of the automobile, and a little bit further down the road, next thing you know, came radios and televisions and all the other conveniences that we currently have, toasters, everything. So the industrial age and global warming. If this is warming and this is age, they tended to do this. If you put your charts side by side or over top each other, whatever, um, they ran in tandem. And of course, most of that is contributed to the fact that we're burning fossil fuels and letting those emissions escape into our atmosphere. Okay, now look, some people say that's just coincidence. Some say it's factual. I don't care. I don't follow either line on that. Just live my life the way I live it and just deal with whatever comes down the pipe. But let's take and say that is more than a coincidence. Let's say all the global warming activists are correct. That the industrialization of the world has created a man-made global warming factor. Okay. Now, earlier we talked about what I call the tipping points, where countries are now selling more oil than what they have left in the ground. Whether or not we've reached that, is debatable. I don't know as I said earlier, I don't know what their reservoirs are um, from the beginning. I don't know what their reservoirs are now. But let's say those tipping points are coming. Okay. Now, when we get to that stage where we begin selling oil out that way, there's going to be a point in time, and it might take another 50 years or so before we hit it, like I said earlier. But at some point, you're going to have a cresting of what you call the industrial age. Right now, like I say, we're running around nilly-willy in our cars and all this kind of stuff, and we're just factory output after factory output, and a lot of wasteful things going on in our daily lives. Um, when it comes to materials, we live in a disposable society right now. We're building, you know, VCR, not VCRs, do thing in the past there, DVD players say. We're building them to last a couple of years or whatever. If they break, you just go buy a new one because it's cheap enough to do that. Well, that's what I meant by waste in our daily lives. We have a lot of disposable things that we do, and since we don't have a real recycling effort going on in this country, um, it does lead to a lot of waste. But that's what adds to the current industrial age. Now, when we get to the crest, where we're to the point where we start having less oil in the world, and it starts going like this. Now, I don't think global warming, if you will, is going to follow that same path. I think it's going to go like this, and then it's going to start doing this. So if this peak is here, this peak is going to be up over here. I think the atmosphere is going to take a little longer to cleanse itself, if you will. But for all you global warming activists that are so worried about seas rising and, wearing shorts on January 10th in Minnesota, I don't think you're going to have to worry about that being a really truism. We may go up another degree or two. If we do, that's not so bad. It averages 93 here during the summer in Jacksonville. Okay, well, if it's 95, that's not that big of a difference. I just don't see any reason to get all hyped, if you will, about the term global warming. Because I think if we get to the level where industrial output starts to fall, which I think it will once we hit those tipping points, then I think you're going to see maybe a decade later or so. It might take a decade. Like I say, there's enough in the air to where if global warming is really related to industrialism, then I think there'll be a little lag time between diminishing of output and diminishment of temperature. But the fact remains, if you're going to base it on industrial globalization, there's going to be a point in time when we will see the beginning of a natural reduction of temperatures around the world simply because there's less industrial output. That's a belief of mine. I think that's what's a natural hope, if you will. In other words, global warming is going to take care of itself if it's man-made and related to industrialization. There are other reasons why we have global warming. It's not just industrialization. Take a look at the volcanoes that are pumping just tons and tons and tons of those greenhouse gases into the air every single day. I mean, I heard, and I forget where I heard it, on PBS or on a radio show or something, that the output of the volcanoes on a daily basis is more than what man does on a daily basis. So, well, maybe you want to stop the volcanoes. Let's pump all the volcanoes and close them down so that those greenhouse gases are not put in the air. Now, naturally, it's impractical. There's nothing you can do. I mean, Mother Nature may be saying that she has to vent, the upper crust and get rid of some of the heat that's built up underneath. But I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I've never studied that sort of thing. It's just speculation. And, it could be just a combination that man does put out, some global warming gases, greenhouse gases. But these volcanoes have been doing it for millions of years. Matter of fact, I heard on one of the shows that during the dinosaur era, the carbon content in the air was like 5 times as much as it is today. If that statement is true, then we're not even close to being what this globe used to be like. So the real basis of this is just that, when we begin a diminishment of oil, give it a little bit of a lag time, you're also going to see a diminishment of greenhouse gases, and you're also going to see a diminishment of the temperature. It's going to start lowering. And that's if man's industrialization is the root cause of global warming. That may or may not be the case. Time will be telling, and it will tell, because there is going to be a time when that industrialization diminishes. I guess one thing you have to think about when it comes to removing greenhouse gases from the atmosphere, just remember one thing: you got to be careful for what you wish, because it just might come true. because when you remove those gases, we are going to lower the temperatures. You may find that your winters get very, very cold compared to what they are today. When I lived in Louisville, I was studying their record low temperatures, and there's some that get broken. It's natural. But I noticed that for the records that stayed and that were popping up in like January and February, it seemed like, you know, you have say 60 days there, like 40 of those days were from the 1800s, and the record lows were just crazy. I mean, I don't remember the day, it was late January, but the record low when that hit was like minus 20 degrees. Minus 20. I mean, growing up as a kid, I think the lowest we ever got was -5, and last year I think we hit -8, maybe -9. But think about it, another 11 or 12 degrees into the negative numbers, and that's in Louisville, Kentucky. So be careful for what you wish, because it just might come true. All right, we're going to go into chapter 2, or segment 2, I guess, if you will, on global warming next. We're going to take a look at, some of the things we can do to conserve our oil, and at the same time have a diminishment or maybe a restriction, if you will, of man-made global warming if it is a reality. Talk to you later.